The Dallas Cowboys play their final preseason game of the year, thank goodness, on Friday. We'll tell you the players that we are excited to watch next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. And on today's show, we're going to preview the Cowboys' final preseason game of the year against the Atlanta Falcons. We made it, Landon. Like we're almost done with preseason football. You know my disdain for preseason football, but we're going to talk. Well, we're going to talk.
I thought you were just excited about the third preseason game and getting to watch a third preseason game, which is always so much fun.
No, but there are players out there that we're excited to watch. This game does matter for a lot of these guys fighting to make the 53-man roster, fighting to make practice squads. And that's what I don't want to be too harsh because there's a lot of players that are going to play over the weekend where this will be the last time they ever play football, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just the truth. But I did want to start with this. How much does this game matter when it comes to evaluation? Like, can somebody who was not on the roster really play their way onto the 53 with a strong performance?
I think it's more just another data point. I mean, we kind of, ascribe this sort of extra importance to it because it's the last preseason game and maybe it's the last impression that you can possibly make on their coaching staff before the decision is made. But, I think as the exercises that we kind of went through the last few days show, for the most part, this team is already kind of pretty well set. And even for those, let's say, was it like 11 names that were or so that are up for grab? I mean, who knows? It could be more than that. Let's say it's 15, right? Even for those 15 that are kind of up for grabs or in that not so sure zone, the hay is mostly in the barn at this point, and I think that the evaluations that you get from this game are more data points, but they're not like any better data points than, say, the second preseason game or a practice that you saw 2 weeks ago. So I do think that we kind of give it this, this is your last chance kind of spin to it. But the truth of the matter is this isn't any more important preseason game for these guys than the first or second game.
It's really like a glorified practice that's just televised for everybody to watch. And at least what we've seen from the Cowboys in the past is they don't treat this last preseason game to be worth anything more than what a regular practice would be. Right now, we do hear guys being called gamers, and sometimes they get on the field, they make splash plays. I'll give you an example. Last year, Julius Wood had a really strong preseason, a really good week 3 game. A lot of us thought there's no way the Cowboys can cut this guy, and they did, and they lost him. Somebody claimed him on waivers. Really haven't heard much from him again. I just don't want people to overreact too much one way or another when it comes to this final preseason game.
Yeah, I mean, as far as ultimately wins and losses in the regular season, what happens in this preseason game is not super related to that. I mean, this is really about deciding the fates of folks that are going to be on your practice squad, that are going to be on the very back end of your roster, the likely the game day inactives, and even guys that may not last on your roster very long, even if they do make it, so. This is not a game for players that are consequential to wins and losses in the NFL regular season. This is a game for folks that are still kind of in the development part of league of their careers, or they're getting kind of an extra evaluation as to how they'll be used in the regular season. Like Jaydon Blue, I think, is a good example of that. Someone we'll talk about in the next segment. Yeah.
But I do think this game does matter for guys that are going to be on the roster. Like, I'll give you an example from last year. I think Trey Lance got to play the entire game. I believe it was against the Chargers last year. He got to play the entire game. And we were hoping that he was going to go out there and light it up. And you came away from that game not thinking, oh, they should cut him, but you thought, there's no way this guy can be the Cowboys' backup quarterback. And he wasn't, right? Like, that game kind of showed how far away he was from being ready. I think for someone like Joe Milton, this is a big time opportunity. If we have the same kind of conclusion coming out of this game, that's going to be a big knock on Joe Milton.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Joe Milton, really more than evaluation, it's just about getting these snaps, right?
Yeah.
Like, because he's not going to get any opportunity. I think no matter what, like Milton is likely to be on the team because I think they want to keep him and develop him, and maybe we're wrong there, but that's the vibe I get, and they certainly don't seem to think that this is a situation that he needs to hurry on or get cross a certain threshold. I don't even know that he's angling to be the backup quarterback at this point, but my point is that this is important to him because this is the only opportunity he's going to get live game reps and probably until next year, right? And hopefully and if he, this is really his only chance. We talked about it all the time. He needs snaps to improve. This may be his only opportunity to try to go out there and get better by getting these opportunities. So, but how does that relate to the 2025 Dallas Cowboys? It doesn't relate very much, right? It relates more to an individual player's trajectory, but a player that we don't think will hopefully have an impact on what happens next season.
All right, we're going to talk about some players on both sides of the ball that we are excited to watch. But just before we do that, it feels pretty unlikely that anybody of, I don't want to say value because that's not true, but like most of your top 30 players, 35 players aren't going to suit up in this game, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be more protectionist than they are going to be, evaluating these guys.
Yeah, I would assume so. All right, let's talk about some players that we're excited to watch on offense, including Jaydon Blue. That's why I didn't want to say not a value, because I do think Blue is going to be an important player for the Cowboys this year. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, Landon and I are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. And to kick it off, they've just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's only one team left standing. And with the season right around the corner, now is the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. And if you're into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. So stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. All right, Lane, let's talk about some players on offense that we are excited to watch. And I think Jaydon Blue has to be number one here.
Yeah, I mean, on the list of guys who actually might make it a difference on Sundays, Jaydon Blue is kind of near the top of the guys that we want to see, right? I think there's other guys out there that are going to get some snaps, but Blue is the guy that we just haven't seen very much. We haven't seen anything in the preseason yet. We've seen the training camp, obviously the carries there, but with running back, we've talked about it over and over again. We need to see him taking live snaps where he's being taken down to the ground so we can kind of truly see how he's doing. And it's unfortunate that because of the injuries and everything that's happened, that we didn't get an opportunity to kind of see him behind a higher rated offensive line, or at least higher on our depth chart.
But that might be a good thing, honestly. I wonder
so?
if that's a good thing. I want to see him be able to create more on his own, because not everything's going to be blocked well.
That's fair. I also just think that it's important to kind of see, something of what success looks like, because you're right. Not everything's going to be blocked well, but he also should get an opportunity to see what it looks like when it is blocked well. And that's what you worry about without offensive line.
Well, and I would say, I don't think we'll see Tyler Booker probably in this game. If we do, series or two at the most, right? Maybe we'll see Cooper Beebe. But we will see like a pretty decent backup offensive line. I'm assuming Nate Thomas plays. Brock Hoffman will play. TJ Bass. Atlanta's not playing anybody on defense, like Jalen Walker, James Pierce. None of those guys are playing. So it might be okay.
It's not like Jalen Walker and James Pierce about to stop the run either.
Well,
So yeah,
fair point. Although I like Jalen Walker, but go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Listen, we won't rehash our draft loves, but yes, I don't disagree. But I do think, yeah. I mean, I think that was the other point I was going to make counter to my point was that the one thing the Cowboys do have going for them is a lot of depth at the offensive line. So even though their starters may not be playing, I think Nate Thomas is an interesting name now that you throw that out there to see if have they actually announced that he's going to play for sure? Because
I would assume that he would because he just needs at least some reps. I mean, even if it's 2 series or whatever.
I would assume that he plays something, but I wouldn't be shocked if he gets pulled early simply because, man, you can't have him getting hurt. Yeah. So, I do think that, we're going to get a good look at Blue against, maybe a little bit of an inferior group going against on the other side. I think one of the things that we talked about, I think maybe it was on our squad show, is for me, like, I kind of just want to see him go out there and take all, he's not going to get this opportunity probably certainly not early with the Cowboys. I just want to see him go out there and take all the snaps as a running back on like 2 or 3 straight drives, right? Where he's doing everything that no matter what's being called, right? Just to get an evaluation of his entire game, not just like, I think he's going to be used more situationally early on as a running back for like in the regular season. So I want to see like exactly right now where he is in the other parts of his game so that we can know, hey, is this something that he can work towards being like the lead in this committee? Or is he always going to be kind of that alternate back, that change of pace back, that, whatever you want to call it, guy, that the Tony Pollard role early in his career for the Cowboys for, the 2025 season?
A couple more guys I wanted to mention. Blue's obviously at the very top. Like, I think everybody's excited to see Jaydon Blue. Real quick, do you think how he performs in this game could decide, first of all, how the Cowboys handle the running back situation during cutdowns and even his early season role? Like, is that much weighing on him here?
I think that there's unanswered questions about his game that probably need to be answered in, like, how is he breaking tackles in the NFL, right? Like, how does it look like when he has to like, get a hand, someone gets an arm or a hand on him? Like, those were the kind of things that we worried about with Deuce Vaughn, right? Where, man, without pads, it looks good. He can move around, but once pads came on and a guy just taps him and he's falling over, like, that's a problem, right? Like,
by the way, Deuce Vaughn was one of the biggest winners coming out of week 3 of the preseason last year, just to show you how much it doesn't matter.
There you go. So yeah, I mean, I think it's more just like seeing the kind of contact balance, which are key parts of an evaluation. It's not so much that like we're evaluating whether he did well and we're going to look at his stat line. It's, hey, remember on second down when he got an arm on him but he was still able to get to the second level? It's like it's adding data points to his individual skill set, which is not quite fleshed out for the Cowboys because they haven't had an opportunity to see him in live game reps yet.
Bingo. A couple more players that I wanted to mention. Johnny Cornelius, who the Cowboys drafted late on day 3. He's been playing right tackle. He's had a pretty good preseason so far. Like, it's not been perfect. It's kind of some ugly wins, but he just hasn't really gotten beat yet. Again, I'm knocking on wood that he doesn't get beat tonight. But so I think he's somebody that, like, I don't think he's going to be active on game days. I do think he's going to make the 53-man roster, but can he show you enough in this game to kind of get you excited about what he might be a year from now?
I think that he falls into this category of guys that it's not so much that we want to see you go out and have a great game, is just continue, like, finish strong because you've had this drumbeat this
do the same thing you've done the last 2 weeks, right?
Exactly. Just keep it going. So it's not so like much that I need to go out there and see him pancaking guys or that I'm gonna be disappointed because he gave up a pressure or a sack, you know what I'm saying? Like, but if he plays overall well, like he has these last few weeks, I think that's a continued strong data point. So that's good. And I think that there's several guys like that where it's not so much that I need you to break out in this game. You've had a good camp. You played a couple good preseason games. Let's just see you continue that and not go out there and embarrass yourself in a situation, because that's often what happens, right? Is that you get drumbeat guys who get into this preseason game, and this should be a cakewalk, right? This should be one of the easier games you play because everyone's pulled back their starters and it's just down roster guys. And then sometimes these guys get in there and they completely can't do it, and you learn a little bit more about the guy that you were learning all throughout training camp, that hey, maybe he can't sustain this, even when it's not as a difficult task as it was the previous week.
Couple more guys on offense, and really it's a whole position. It's the tight end position. Let's just give you a state of the tight end position right now. You've got Jake Ferguson signed a long-term deal, had a little bit of like a back neck injury during camp. He's okay, but that's your starting tight end. Luke Schoonmaker dealing with a concussion. He's likely to be out for a week, 2 weeks. That's something that could take us all the way up to week 1. You've got Brevin Spann-Ford that's dealing with a high ankle injury, and that's your tight end room. And we thought this was going to be a tight end group that was going to play a lot early in the season, and I still do. But I wonder if there's not a spot open for at least early in the season for one of these guys, whether it's Tyler Neville, Rivaldo Fairweather, John Stevens. It feels like there's an opportunity for one of these guys to step up.
Yeah, and maybe not even if they make the roster necessarily, but as a guy that, gets onto the practice squad and gets called up early, right? Just because to kind of get us through the situation with the kind of several different temporary injuries, it feels like, or at least timelines in which that you're getting close to week 1.
Yeah, you bring a guy up for 3 weeks and then Spann-Ford's ready to go and Schoonmaker's all cleared. No worries.
Yeah, I just feel like it's a lot like the cornerback position right now, where it's like you got a couple guys coming in pretty quickly. You need to figure out a way to get through this early part of the season, and then you may be able to figure this out a little bit better. So that's why I feel like they may not necessarily go long at the position. In fact, they may go short at the position, because they can put names on lists. And then, pull them off potentially. I mean, I don't know if they necessarily want to do that with, it depends on how serious BSF's injury is. Maybe they want to, do something there, but otherwise they may need to just figure out a way to sneak one of those 2 guys through the practice squad and then get them on the other side and call them up for the week 1 to week 2.
All right, let's talk about some players on defense that we are excited to watch tonight. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. These days, it feels like there's advice for everything: cold plunges, gratitude journals, screen detoxes. But how do you know what actually works for you? With so much information online about mental health and awareness, it can be overwhelming to figure out what's true and what will actually help. But that's where talking to a licensed therapist through BetterHelp can make all of the difference. You get real personalized guidance instead of just guessing based on something that you might have seen on social media. I found that therapy isn't just for navigating like major challenges in my life. It's also about building positive coping skills and learning how to set boundaries. So talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNFL. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast with Vinny Iyer and Michelle Majuk. Listen every day to prep for your fantasy draft and become the most informed manager so you can take home your league's trophy this season. Find Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, later. Let's talk about some guys on defense that we are excited to watch. Why don't you go first?
Well, I think again, man, excited to watch may not be the word here, but I'm interested to watch Andrew Booth, right? Because I think that he's in a spot right now where he's like Jaydon Blue right now, where you feel like he's probably on the team just because of the way that the injury situation has been and the need there. But how much I'm going to feel comfortable about him going into week 1 and how much his role is going to be, where his role is going to be, could be affected by his ability to kind of, again, not like splash, but just kind of continue what has been mostly a positive camp for Andrew Booth, right? Like, I think he came out and obviously had the pick 6 last week. And then he's just kind of played well. And even when he's gotten beat by, Pickens or CeeDee Lamb, you see him in the frame, right? Like, and that's honestly, that's a huge improvement from where we've seen him. So one of the things we needed Andrew Booth to definitely do to get better was kind of raise the floor. So this definitely, just like we talked about in the last segment, this definitely qualifies as one of those situations where, hey, you've done a great job of having a steady drumbeat this whole time. This should be your easiest assignment. Don't screw it up. And so, and it'll be interesting. He may screw it up, and we'll be like, man, we can't trust this guy. Or he may get through, and we'll be like, okay, there's a little hope here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the entire secondary because a lot of these guys, we're just trying to figure out. And we talked about on yesterday's show, like the Keemont Hall, Zion Childress battle. It feels like one of those guys for sure will be on the roster. It's tough to get them both on the team, but who's starting in the nickel? How do they perform? Who's coming up and making plays and run support? It's this entire secondary. You're just looking for one more guy to step up and not be awful. Like that's the bar to clear. That's what we're looking for. Don't be awful. If the Cowboys can get one, it'll be a win from preseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, the good news is that they like their options there. We'll see how they can figure out how to get everybody on the roster. I think that another guy that is going to be interesting to me is Perrion Winfrey, right? He's right on the board, right on the border of the roster. Like, I feel like I'm a yes on him right now. But again, I think it's another situation where I just do it one more time for me. We've got an opportunity here. I don't need you to go out there and get 2 sacks, but if you do, that's fantastic. I just need you to go out there and not embarrass yourself and look, put some good tape out there, solid tape out there. And that will kind of continue the drumbeat. And to me, that consistency is, I think, a lot from what was missing from this player early in his NFL career. The fact that he's been able to kind of be a decent player for a stretch of time through training camp and preseason, I think will make a difference.
Yeah, it feels very much like if Perrion Winfrey can have a strong preseason performance, I already think he's on the roster. This would just kind of solidify it a little bit. Yeah. And then that opens you up to maybe what type of defensive tackle you can go out and try to get in free agency or trade, because I like Winfrey as like this guy that can play 1, can play 3, can move all up and down the line. I don't think he's a full-time player. I think he's a 15 to 20 snap a game type of player. But if you pair him with pick your nose tackle type, Linval Joseph, maybe that's acceptable enough. You have Solomon Thomas, you have Marshawn Nealon who can kick inside, and that's how you get by at defensive tackle in the meantime. I agree with you. Winfrey is somebody that I'm going to be watching on every single snap when he's out there on Friday.
Yeah, I think if you're imagining Thomas and Winfrey as defensive tackles 3 and 4, I like that as their slotting. I like I feel confident about that, those guys in those roles. Now you have to go figure out, like, we got to upgrade on Mozzie Smith. We got to, we obviously have Osa. We got to figure out who that other big body is, and then I think you'll feel a whole lot better about that whole position.
And the last one for me is just the linebackers as a whole. We're not going to see Kenneth Murray. At least I don't think so. I mean, it'd be interesting if we did. I probably won't see much of Jack Sanborn. I think Maris Leofau snaps are even going to be limited. But it's that next group: Shamar James, Damone Clark, Justin Barron. We've seen this linebacker group throughout the preseason play pretty well. I mean, they're fundamentally sound. They're flying around making plays. Just another week of that would just give me a lot more confidence going into the season that linebacker's not going to be their Achilles heel on defense.
Yeah, Barron and I would say Childress is probably the other guy, are the 2 guys that I would say qualify as, if they had a great performance in this 3rd preseason game, that may be enough, right? Like that may be the finishing touch. There's only a few guys who you really could say that, like that there isn't a decision necessarily to be made there. But these young undrafted guys who have played decently throughout the training camp, who could be special teams guys, I think if either one of them comes in and has 2 interceptions or a sack or whatever, right? They flash. I think that could be the kind of finishing argument that a lot of folks are looking for across this roster, that they actually legitimately have a chance to move the needle on.
And I've been wondering anyways, like, if the Cowboys are going to try to keep some more undrafted free agents just to get a little bit younger, to get some cheaper in some spots. You're not saving a ton of money, But if you can kind of keep some, the back end of your roster filled with these cheap guys, it does add up a little bit. And maybe that's how you win in the margins a little bit here. So yeah, Barron's a good one. Childress is another one. Keemon Hall is another guy to keep an eye on. Should be fun to watch later.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you're a sicko for this team, like I guess all of us are, that if you're listening to this podcast, you're a fan of watching third preseason games, and pretending like you don't like it.
Pretending.
Yeah. No, I think look, there's lots of individual storylines to focus in on, but I do want to kind of point back to your point up front, right, where it's. Let's keep in mind, if they look bad, if they don't score a bunch of points, that doesn't really play into what's going to happen with the regular season. None of these folks are really going to be huge contributors to the Cowboys. But if you're interested in the team building aspect, the long-term aspect of the Dallas Cowboys, Friday night will be a fun chance to see, man, who could have a little future in the NFL.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, the Cowboys played Jacksonville in their final preseason game. They lost, by the way. They did not look good. Your leading receivers in that game were, I think, Simi Fehoko, Seth Green, Tyron Johnson, Dennis Houston,
Devin
Harper. Yeah, Devin Harper was your leading tackler. Just don't overreact to anything that happens in these games. Once we get through this game on Friday night, we're never going to talk about it again. That's just how little these preseason games kind of matter.
Yeah. I mean, there's interesting angles, but again, it's important to keep the context of, hey, how much does this really affect, Micah Parsons and Dak Prescott and all this? How much does this really affect them when they're going out to win the game on Sundays or Thursday, I guess in the case of the Eagle game?
Yeah, programming note. We're going to be live after the game on the Squad Show to talk about the Week 3 preseason game against the Falcons. So make sure you guys check that out. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Landon's laughing because he knows I got to do the Squad Show afterwards.
That's right.
Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy the final preseason game as much as you can. We'll be back here on Friday night to break it all down.